Episode 119. Old Villain. Exactly. Why not? Mrs. Cox immediately seconded. My Lila has only had one man. Unlike that bitch, having numerous affairs with different guys, she was lucky to have lost the baby. Otherwise, we would need to find out who the father is. Serena heard that and became furious. As she was about to rebut, someone exclaimed, You should wash your mouth with soap. Everyone turned their head and saw Travis Green walking out. His gentle look became dark. You are indeed rude enough to have a shameless daughter like that. Hearing Travis Green's words, Mrs. Cox bristled. Who the hell are you? I have an educated daughter, while Serena does not even have parents to teach her right from wrong. Travis Green was so pissed that he almost raised his hand. Without thinking, he blurted out, That's not true. I am her father. Everyone gasped. Mrs. Cox was also dazed, gazing at Travis Green. After saying that, Travis Green felt he might have made a mistake. However, facing Mrs. Cox's gaze, he felt a secret bliss and said, I, Travis Green, am Serena's father. Whether she acknowledges me or not, I'm proud to have her as my daughter. Shit! That's big news! Mary Parker exclaimed first. Even the celebrity guests that had seen a lot in their lifetime felt incredulous. With his fame and reputation, it was clearly unwise for Travis Green to suddenly have a scandal that involved an illegitimate daughter. It could easily hurt him or destroy him. Everything he had worked for throughout the years could be ruined. That was something crazy to do. No wonder Travis Green had come to this event with his band. This was the reason. As if he had not noticed what kind of impact his words had. Travis Green warned Mrs. Cox. Whoever wants to harm my daughter must challenge me first. Scared by the sudden threat, Mrs. Cox was speechless. The reporters around them were immediately in an uproar, broadcasting this explosive news as fast as possible. Within minutes, a new title was posted on Weibo. Breaking news. Renowned pianist Travis Green is Serena's father-in-law. Serena, I will only ask you one thing. What is the relationship between you and Lila Cox? Travis Green sounded tough. Do you have anything to do with her baby? As more than 100 people were looking at them, Jake said firmly, Nothing. The expected answer. Serena squeezed his hand, and Jake pulled her into his arms. Leaning against his chest, Serena could feel his heartbeat as he said, I, Jake Robinson, have only had one woman. Bullshit! Mrs. Cox was infuriated, trying to slap Jake. Jake's eyes darkened as he turned sideways, protecting Serena. However, he took the slap with his back. The muffled sound made Serena shudder, as if it had actually hit her. Not getting her way, Mrs. Cox could not contain her anger and launched another strike. However, her hand was caught by Jake as he gazed at her coldly. Slap. With a loud noise, Mrs. Cox covered her face, looking at the woman in Jake's arms incredulously. You hit me! Mrs. Cox looked shocked and screamed, wanting to hit back. However, before she moved, Drake threw her arm forward. Mrs. Cox was plunged forward, almost falling. As she gained balance again, she looked at Jake and Serena incredulously. "You should respect your elders, and look at what you did!" Being slapped in the face and thrown off her feet made Mrs. Cox feel completely humiliated. Why did the two youngsters treat her like that? "Elder?" Serena looked contempt. "An elder who earns respect from the junior generation deserves it, while elders like you are simply old villains." "Well said!" someone exclaimed in the crowd. Captain Henrik also looked proud and remarked, "Well put." With Captain Henrik's compliment, more and more people nodded. Mrs. Cox looked pale, gritting her teeth. "Don't cross the line here!" a girl exclaimed. As people looked back, Lila Cox was striding angrily. However, she suddenly frowned. Abruptly, her complexion became pale, and her forehead was covered with cold sweat. Lila bent down. "Mom, my belly hurts." When Lila was sent to the hospital, no one of the Robinson family went. Mr. Cox saw his wife cursing loudly in the hospital when he arrived. He suddenly bristled and slapped her hard in the face. "You monstrous woman! Who told you to make a scene at that event? You should use your brain!" Mr. Cox was furious. "I regret it so much that I married you. The Cox's family reputation has been completely ruined by you and your daughters." Hit in the face, Mrs. Cox was first dazed, and then burst into tears hysterically. "Your daughters and wife were humiliated by others. You did not even avenge us, but hit your wife. You don't have balls, Mr. Cox." "Shut up!" Looking ghastly, Mr. Cox said, "Idiot! Why did you have to pick a fight in public? Do you know what the press is saying now? Both girls in the Cox family, pregnant before marriage. Is it due to genetics? What the hell is that? Read it yourself." Mrs. Cox lost her voice and stopped sobbing. "Because of that, in 3 hours, the shares of the company suffered more than what I lost in my last bad investment. You did all this." "What should we do now? What should we do now?" "You tell me. Is Lila really pregnant with Jake's boy?" "Absolutely." Hearing an affirmative answer, Mr. Cox looked better. "That's easy then. The most important thing is to keep the baby. That boy Jake wants to bankrupt my company, but he's too young." Mrs. Cox was startled. "You mean Jake was behind that?" Mr. Cox was disappointed by his wife and gritted his teeth. "The boy has always been competing with us. He never had a good reason to beat us down. But now we are handing our weaknesses over to him." Mrs. Cox felt even more guilty, unable to speak. Mr. Cox held back his anger and said calmly, "Now, we will work on Lila and make sure Jake takes the responsibility. The daughter of the Cox family could not be tossed away just because he wanted to."